Good morning. So last class, I was discussing about warehousing, which is a very important concept in commodity markets. So we'll continue with the same topic. There are some more things which I need to talk about, the procedural things and all those things, how the settlement happens in warehouse and all. So let us continue with the same topic today also. I think I had stopped till types of warehousing. So we have around 9 types of warehousing: private warehouse, public warehouse, automated warehouse, and climate controlled warehouse, distribution centers, bonded warehouse, a special commodity warehouse, cold storage or refrigerated warehouse, or institutional warehouse. So these were the different types of warehouses which we can see, and you can choose the warehouse depending upon what type of transaction you are doing. So based on that, you can have that warehouses. Okay, accordingly. Now, what is the basic functions of warehouse then? There are 5 major functions which a warehouse does. The first function is storage, of course. That's the main activity what the warehouse does. So it acts as a place for keeping your commodities. So if you don't have your own space to store the commodities in a proper way, better to look for some warehouse which will offer this facility for a service charge. Okay, and it comes for a cost. Okay, but that keeps your product or a commodity in a very good shape and quantity or quality. So better not for you to worry or take risk. So the risk will be borne by the warehouse authorities. So whenever you have some commodities for which you are trading for future, so better to deposit that commodities in advance if you are already there, or if you are yet to grow, then you can harvest those and later on you can deposit this commodity directly to the buyer. So normally this warehouse acts as a storage area. Uh, Whenever we don't have such facilities internally built by us, because it involves a lot of investments. So if you are of a regular business person, then it's better to have your own warehouse. That too, if you are dealing with a huge quantity and different commodities, if you are doing, and if it is totally based on your own customers who have the base and all those things, better to have your own storage space. Or else, if there is constraint for that particular businessman to have a storage space, he will depend upon a warehouse. That is one thing. That is function is first is storage. Second one is price stabilization. So this we have studied in the last few classes, how warehouse helps in price stabilization. See, basically, price is determined by demand and supply. So the demand and supply forces which acts in the market, right? So that determines the price. So warehouse acts as a place where it keeps the commodities for future purposes. Okay, so depending upon the demand and supply, the quantities are either released or kept in warehouse, and that in turn leads to bringing the price under control. Okay, so stability in prices is very important. See, there will be up and down in price, volatility in price are certain, it will happen, but to maintain that price at a certain level is very important. Okay, so since some of the commodities are demanded by all type of public, that is rich people, poor people, and all those things, from the point of safeguarding the interest of the common man, the supply and availability of the product or commodities at right time is a very important thing. So there should not be any shortage, or there should not be any surplus type of movement of products or commodities in the market. So this will hamper the price, and again it leads to a lot of problems like inflation or recession or all these things. So warehouse acts as a check okay, in order to stabilize the prices by storing the commodities and distributing the commodities based on their needs and requirements. So that's how they do it. So let us assume a situation where there is an excess production of some commodities during a particular point of time. So if you don't have a warehouse, then it's you must dispose it off. You must sell it off, whether you get a good price or not. Because naturally, you don't get a good price. Why? Because when too much of supply is there in the market, price definitely comes down. So demand falls and price definitely comes down. So supply is exceeding demand then. Okay, so prices normally come down at that point of time. So if you have a warehouse facilities, or if the people are aware that there is a warehouse where we can keep it temporarily, so that after this temporary period of excess supply, if we want to control it in the next couple of months, then they can shift that particular commodity into the warehouse and see that the supply gets restricted into the market, and that creates demand. So when demand gets created, they can move out from the warehouse and start supplying it to the commodity at a better price. So that's how the price stabilization happens if you have a warehouse. Okay, so that's very important. The third one is risk bearing. See, mainly there are a lot of risk associated when you manufacture or produce a commodity. The first and foremost risk is a market risk. So we don't know what the price the market will demand, or whether that product can be successful in the market or not. So there is always a market risk which is dependent on a lot of factors. Okay, which may be an external factor which may be influencing a market, or the government policies which may be where you go for more importing, which can substitute your domestic demand and all those things. So that risk bearing factor in terms of market is there, and there is a risk also with not having the proper facility to store your commodities. So that is one thing. So there is a risk, huge risk, that whatever the products you grow, if or you manufacture, if you are not able to keep it in a proper place, okay, or have a proper insurance to cover that in a proper storage space, then there may be a lot of natural factors which will be having a bad impact on your commodities. So that may reduce your product quality also. So there is a huge risk of the product quality getting deteriorated because of not having a proper storage facilities at your place. So at that point of time, you can depend upon the warehouse which is professionally managed with good technology, with good research oriented, with good preservative techniques, or with good internal environment where we can store and leave that rest to the warehouse, which can control that. See, even if there is something happening in the warehouse also, there will be an insurance cover, there will be a risk cover for your products and commodity what you have stored. So that's the way the warehouse maintains the commodities of the customers or the clients. So to that extent, your risk gets mitigated. Okay, so there will be no risk from your side. Okay, the risk will be taken up, or the ownership of the risk as soon as you move the commodity to the warehouse will be taken up by the warehouse authority itself. So you can happily concentrate on your further manufacturing, or start depending on other factors which are influential for your business. So to that extent, your risk is reduced when you move the products to the warehouse. The fourth one is financing. So as we have already discussed, the warehouse receipts which are given for the goods which you have deposited in the warehouse authority, right? So that acts as a collateral. So it's a very important document. Warehouse receipt is a very important document, specifying the quality, quantity, the time period, everything mentioned on that warehouse, to what extent you have kept that product or commodities in that particular warehouse. So that warehouse receipts acts as a collateral document. So tomorrow, if you want to go for any additional finance for your business operations, so then you can just pledge that document with the bank or any financial institutions which are ready to accept that warehouse receipts. So you can pledge and take finance. So it becomes very important that if you keep the stock and if you don't maintain the stock at proper conditions, right, then the bank may also not be interested to fund you, or any financial institution will not be funding you if you are personally keeping those things, or they may be funding you but not at the level at what you require or what it worth, the stock worth. They don't lend it at what the stock worth, they lend it at 50 or 60% of what the stock worth is. So if you keep at a well recognized or a well established warehouse, right? So then definitely you have a plus point of keeping that the document, pledging the document with any financial institutions which can extend the loans to you based on the warehouse receipt. So that is, financing aspects is a very important thing. So instead of you holding it and getting it audited and getting the reports done from your side and producing to the bank, so warehouse receipts acts as a one document which can give you every information about your quantity, quality, and how long you are storing that product, and how good are you with that particular warehouse in terms and conditions and all those things. So that acts as one of the strong documents which can suffice your requirement of funds as and when it's required. The last important function is about grading and packing. So we have studied that grading and packing is a very important thing, which if you are taking on its own, then you need to get well versed with the standards, specification standards, as we have already discussed. There are a lot of certifying agencies with the different standard certifying agencies which are there. But if you want to do it all, then you need to hire people for that, you need to train the people for that, and you need to engage people, and you need to do the sampling, all those things you need to be do it. So it's unnecessary extra efforts what you are incurring in terms of cost and also in terms of efforts. So instead of that, if you can just have a depositing of your commodities in a warehouse, or then I think the all these services, right, whatever the service of how to pack, what is the specification of packing, or how to do the grading, see, all these things will be, these type of services will be extended to you by the warehouse authority itself. So to that extent, no need for you to incur extra cost on getting these people on board, getting them trained, or paying them on salaries, and looking after the other costs which is associated with doing all this work. So to that extent, you are safe, and these are all something which doesn't add what you call too much of value to your product. So unless and until it is badly required, then only you need to go for such things, or else better to depend on someone, okay, some well-versed authorities who already have qualified people who can do grading and packing for you. So this helps in enhancing the quality of the products by improving your brand, or it may also enhance in bringing the changes in your products which were not there at the initial stage. So it's sort of helping you in form of building your brand. So that can be done only if you have a proper grading and packing type of system existing. So this you can depend upon the authorities, warehouse authorities, which will give this as an additional service when you keep the commodities at the place. So these are the very important functions what a warehouse does normally in storing of the commodities. Then what are the general benefits what we get from warehouse? So if we want to look at what are the various benefits which we'll be getting from the warehouse, the first one is regular production. See, as I told you, when you start depositing this particular commodities, finished goods, whatever you have done into a warehouse, then you can happily concentrate only on production. So there is no need for you to take care of the storing aspects and working on the storage related things and all those things, whether the product, whatever is stored, is it still in good quality or not, or whether the packing is done properly or not, or whether grading is done. See, all these things will be sorted out, or all this thing type of additional work which you are supposed to do, right, it gets reduced when as soon as you move your commodities from your place to warehouse. So that will give you extra time to think about and concentrate more on production related activities. So that will enhance the regular production of the commodity. So there is a supply chain, we can call it as. So you manufacture, you move it to the commodity, you go down warehouse, and from the warehouse you start distributing it. So that helps you in regular production, focusing only on production and start concentrating only on the production activities. Okay, so that's a very important benefits what we get from warehouse, because it enhances our a diversion of our attention to concentrate more on production. Okay, so that leads to continuous or regular production. So because warehouse takes care of all our other activities like distribution, storage, and all those things, so I can focus more on regular production. So that's the one big benefits what we get from warehouse. Second important benefits what we get is time utility. That is utility. Time is a very important factor. Okay, so your cost depends on your time. So more the time, if you're using, the cost piles up. Okay, so that's how the business needs to be very calculative in terms of time. So the production and consumption is two important things which the business will be looking at. So when you produce, the goods should be consumed. So what is the time gap between these two? That's a very important factor. So more the time gap between these two factor, right, it enhances your cost, it increases your cost. Unnecessary burden gets added up to you, because the cost gets piled up when there is a huge gap between the time when you produce and the time when the goods gets consumed. The ultimate objective of the company is to bring down this gap. Okay, it should narrow down or minimize the gap. That's a very important thing what the organization should aim at. So how do you minimize the time? So minimization of time happens only if you have a proper end-to-end connectivity in terms of production and distribution. So if you are able to reduce the time between the time when you produce and the time when it reaches to consumers, then I think the time utilities, whatever we call it as, right, which will be achieved. So warehousing. What is the role of warehousing in this? See, warehousing is a place where you are keeping that particular commodity and getting it distributed. So once you keep the commodity in warehouse, right? So since warehouse takes care of all your storage related activities, right, and also sometimes distribution related activities are also taken up. So it works on the principles of demand and supply in the market, and based on that, you can take a decision to supply the commodities whenever there is peak demand and all those things. So since it creates a demand and supply situation in the market, so it becomes very easy for you to reduce the time gap, because if you are keeping storage, if you are exploring the market, if you are trying to look for new markets and enter into all those things, so it may take a lot of time. Okay, so it requires a lot of investment also for you, and it somewhat diversifies your focus from production to all these things. So in order to bring it back to the level of the utilization of time, so this warehouse gives a very important boost to the companies, especially to balance your demand and supply position. So that's basically how the market performs. So the market is directly linked to this, how the warehouses respond to the market. So that brings the time gap between the production and the consumption. So production is one side, what the company is trying to focus, and the consumption, that is the goods, whatever they manufacture, they should reach the end users. So that's the other objective. So the time gap between these two gets limited or becomes minimized because of the warehouse facilities which takes care of the storage and distribution activities. So that's how it creates time utility. So that's a very important thing. Time is a very important factor in business. Then store of surplus goods. Yeah, of course, this is a place. So when you are manufactured beyond, or you had some intention in mind, and depending upon your intuit and your way of analyzing the market, you manufacture the product in excess. So suddenly there is a fall in demand. Okay, it happens in business, right? You expect something, and if that doesn't happen, so whatever the excess goods you are manufactured now needs to be stored. So where do you store that? You don't can you it will be a foolish thing if you go for constructing a warehouse at that point of time, or going for some temporary arrangements of having a shed or something like that to keep that commodities and all those things, because it involves huge investments. So at that time, I think if you have gone for excess production, depending upon some, and later on you find that the market did not respond to the demand or the production, whatever you have done. So you cannot just dispose it off, or you cannot just throw it off. So the better way to do it is move that excess, the surplus goods, whatever you have manufactured, into a warehouse. Okay, keep it there for 2 months, 3 months, or down the lane when the demand gets settled, and ultimately again you can reintroduce that particular products in the market. So you can bring it back to that the products into the market. So that is one thing which the warehouse does. So any surplus manufactured goods, okay, you can keep it in warehouse. So that acts as a buffer for you. So whenever there is a need, or whenever the demand picks up, then you will be in a position to supply to the market. So you have a ready available commodities or products which are there in the warehouse. So as soon as the demand picks, you can just release that product. So there is no need for you to go for again manufacturing and all those things. So that takes care of your surplus. So earlier, if there is no proper warehouse facility, then the surplus used to be discarded. Either you need to sell it at a cost or less than cost price. So in the market, you need to dispose of, or else you cannot store that. So since there are concepts of warehouse which are there now, you have at least now an option to move that particular product which are manufactured in surplus, right, to that warehouse, and later on when the demand picks up, you can take out that particular from the warehouse and start selling in the market. So that's a very important that's a very important objectives, or the benefits what we can derive from the warehouse. Then price stabilization, I think we have discussed already on this. So then the functions of warehouse, we have discussed about the price stabilization. So that is one of the biggest benefits of warehousing. Minimization of risk, of course, if you are keeping that particular stock in your own place, right, there are a lot of risk which is associated. Storage risks are there, environmental risks are there, market risks are there. So there are technology risks are there. A lot of risks are there today in order to cater to the needs and demands. So to that extent, you can avoid all this risk. And in order to cover that risk, again, you need to take a lot of pain, a lot of investments are required, a lot of human resources are required. And again, it's an unnecessary burden on your profit side, that is on the expense side of your profit and loss account. So better not get into those things. Instead of that, depend on a warehouse. Warehouse gives all your assistance. So it's not only giving you the support of storing the commodities in their place, but it gives a lot of value added services to you. Okay, they do a lot of analysis, they give a lot of reports. So you can make use of that, and again, you can take strategic decisions, okay, by using that information. So warehouse not only acts as a storing place today, okay, and gives a lot of other beneficial services which can be used for strategic business decisions. So that's a very important thing what we need to understand when we talk about warehousing. Then packing and grading, as we have already discussed on that in the functions. So that's again one of the very good benefits. Of course, financing, we have again studied the same thing in functions. So financing is a very important benefits what we get from warehousing. So that's a very important requirement. So coming back to the regulatory authority, I was talking about, right? So even warehouses are regulated. That means there is an authority which regulates the warehouse. So it's called as Warehouse Development and Regulatory Authorities. Okay, it is called as Warehouse Development and Regulatory Authority, and this came into force in 2007. Okay, there was something called as Warehouse Development and Regulation Act. Okay, 2007, which talks about this warehouse development and regulatory. So it comes under Department of Food and Public Distribution, Government of India. So warehousing plays a very vital role in promoting rural banking and financing, with a view for overall growth and development of this warehousing sector, and to promote this efficiency in conduct of warehouse business. The government came up with this. The government of India came up with introducing a negotiable warehouse receipt system. So, and the Parliament enacted this law, Warehouse Regulation and Development and Regulation Act 2006, and the Government of India has notified this in the Gazette of India, and the extraordinary Part 2, Section 1, dated 2000 September 2007. The provision of the acts have also become effective from 25th October 2010. So what are the provision? As per the provision, Warehouse Development and Regulatory Authority, called as WDRA, Warehouse Development and Regulatory Authority, comprises of one chairman and two full-time members, has been set up in the Government of India from 26th October. The negotiable warehouse receipt system has been formally launched by the Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution Department. So the ministry had done it. So the main objective of the Warehouse Development and Regulation Authority, that is the act, is it is called as Warehouse Development and Regulation Act 2007, is to make provision for the development and regulation of warehouses. So that's the first primary objective. So developing, not only it focuses on developing the warehouse, and also at the same time regulating the warehouse. Because why they need the regulation? Because most of the products what will be kept in warehouse will be of food commodities or food products. Okay, so as you people know that they are more of essential commodities. Food is essential commodities. Okay, so they even talk about oil seeds, the cereals, and rice, paddy, ragi. All these things are stored today. Okay, so since these are essential commodities, and which is very much required, so there need to be some regulations. Or else, if you don't control it, then hoarding happens, black marketing happens, or the price, okay, for this commodity gets unregulated, and people will start exploiting the markets and all those things. So better to bring it under regulations, so that the essential commodities, basically, which is required or demanded by all sections of the commodity, right? All sections of the community, that is the people, all sections of the people, it becomes very important that they do the regulations on this particular thing. So government came with the objective of that, to promote professional organizations connected with warehousing business. So that's one of the important things. So they are given professional touch to the warehousing thing. So negotiating of warehouse receipts, establishment of warehouse development and regulatory authority, and any disputes relating to the differences between the warehouse authority and the people who are using that services, right? They need to be settled. Okay, so they cannot go to court of law for each and everything. So there should be some authority which monitors this, which checks this. So any illegal way of activities carried out by either of the parties, the warehouse, right? So it needs to be checked, it needs to be controlled, or it needs to be removed from that particular activity. So in order to do all this thing, the regulations are very much required. So where WDRA is one thing, Warehouse Development Regulatory Authority is the one thing which envisages on these factors of bringing reforms into the warehousing system, so that both the parties, that is warehouse as well as the person who is using that services, interest gets protected. So that's a very important thing. And the negotiable warehouse receipts issued by the warehouse registered under the Act would help farmers to seek loans from the banks against these negotiable warehouse receipts, and to avoid distress sale of their agricultural produce. So that's very important, distress sale of agriculture produce. So this is one thing which was very much was need at the for the farmers. And today there is a lot of focus on this warehousing, especially in the last 2 year budgets, right? Government has pushed for more on these storage facilities, improving and increasing the storage facilities. So today we have become a surplus in our food reserves, right? Because of the upgraded warehouse facilities, storage facilities which have come up in the last couple of years. So that has led to having a lot of what do you call a lot of well knitted networking of warehouse facility system across the country, so that the farmers can now easily focus or take up the farming activities in a better way, so that there's no need for them to worry about the storage part. So that was one of the biggest thing, because the maximum percentage of farmers in India are under the category of small and marginal farmers. So they are almost around 82% of our total farming activities. So they are the people who cannot afford for a good storage facility at their place. So they cannot construct their own storage facility because their land holdings are very less. So they depend upon a well established warehouse facility for their storage, so which can help them in storing their commodities for time period, so that they can also get good money for increasing the demand of that particular product and selling it at that point of time. So those are the factors which with the NWR, that is negotiable warehouse receipts, do it. That is they avoid distress sale of the agricultural produce. Okay, it will also be beneficial for a number of other stakeholders such as banks, financial institution, insurance company, trade, commodity exchange, and as well as the consumer. So it gives a lot of business to the insurance company, because as soon as you keep the commodity in the warehouse, so it needs to be insured. So insurance comes into picture. So that gives a lot of business to insurance sector. So there are a lot of depending sectors which starts growing when you have a warehouse. So that's what I wanted to say. So not only insurance, and sectors like banking sectors also gets a new boost in order to lend, okay, depending upon the security, what the collateral, whatever they're offering, or it increases the trade and all those activities. So that's where the role of warehouse development regulatory authority comes into picture. So that's one thing. So the next one is power and functions of the authority. What are the powers and various functions of warehouse development regulatory authority? The first function is subject to the provisions of this act and any other law for the time being in force, the authority shall have the duty to regulate and ensure implementation of provisions of this act and promote orderly growth of the warehouse business. So that's the overall objectives under which the authorities work. So second one is without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing provision, the powers and functions of the authority shall include following. What are those things? Let us see. Namely, to issue the applicants fulfilling the requirement for warehouse a certificate of registration in respect of warehouse, or renew, modify, withdraw, suspend, or cancel such registration. So this is one thing what they do. So every person who wants to use the warehouse facility first needs to get registered with these warehouse authorities. So they give you valid. There is a registration application which needs to be filled. You need to take up the registration. Okay, and that registration is not for lifetime. Okay, it needs to be renewed. It needs to be renewed from time to time, and if there is some changes which needs to be done, it needs to be modified. Or sometimes if you have sold your land or if you have sold your business, then you need to go for withdrawing or cancellation or suspensions of such registration and all those things. So it is a time to time, the authorities needs to be updated. So they have a lot of KYC documentation which needs to be fulfilled and all those things. So they ensure that these things needs to be done. And to regulate the registration and functioning of accredited agency, renew, modify, withdraw, suspend, or cancel such registration, and specify the code of conduct for officials of accreditation agencies for accreditations of the warehouse. So the regulation part is very important. Okay. So there are a lot of other agencies which will be hosting or which will be working with the warehousing authority. So that becomes very important for these regulatory authorities to maintain or help them, okay, in order to establish the functions of the accredited agencies which are working with them, or to monitor those things whether they are doing it properly or not. And they also from time to time give the code of conducts for official of accreditation agencies for accreditation of the warehouse and all those things. So it not only works from the authority, does not work only for the people who are coming and using the service of warehouse. It takes care of even the warehouse itself. So establishing the warehouse, that also becomes very important. Simply I and you cannot go and establish a warehouse. So they look into a lot of due diligence thing, whether that person who is hosting the warehouse or starting up the warehouse has a lot of credibility in the market. So has he taken proper approval, licenses, etc. before starting up? So have he got his clearance done from various institutions? See, these are all the factors which the regulatory authority does. So it tries to find out both from the warehouse servicing part and also from the customer's part. So both of them are having the proper qualities and guidelines have been followed before they start using the services. So that's the role of a regulator. That's very important. To specify the qualification, code of conduct, and practical training for warehousemen and staff engaged in warehousing business. So this is one more thing. So they equip the warehouse facilities with all the necessary skill sets. So be it in the form of training procedures, which needs to be imparted to the various warehouse people who are there, and also to they tell what are the qualifications or what are the experience background of any person who wants to work in a warehouse authority, right? So whether that person possesses all the necessary skill sets. So they ensure that this type of training happens or these type of skill sets are given to this type of people and all those things. So that's one of the role what they do it. So then to specify the qualification conduct of practical training, it's over. To regulate the process of pledge, creation of charge and enforcement thereof in respects of goods deposited with the warehouse. So this is a very, very important thing. So these are some of the legal things which needs to be monitored, and warehouse authorities ensures that they do all this legal thing. So what needs to be done in order to take whenever the bank want to take some pledge of the commodities whatever is stored in warehouse. So what are the procedure involved? So what are the role of a warehouse in that? So these things are something which will be told to the warehouse. So what are the things which they can do or act as a pledgee on all those things? Because tomorrow the commodities are stored in your place. So so you become responsible for all these things. So when you're pledging it, so what are the documentary thing? What are the procedural matters you need to follow? So all these things will be ensured by the regulatory authorities. So that is warehouse development regulatory authorities. To promote efficiency in conduct of warehouse business. So when I say conduct of warehouse business, it includes end-to-end services. Whatever you are committed, you need to deliver that to the customers. So it's not only for the customers you are delivering, even if it is in the case of commodity exchanges, right? You need to involve both the parties, buyers and sellers. They need to be given the proper types of services, especially in order to see that whatever the smooth transaction should take place. So the responsibility lies on the warehouse, especially in terms of settlements of contracts. So whether they have handed over the settlement to a proper person, or they have taken care of all the necessary measures involved in the smooth transition of that settlement. So see, these are the things which warehouse will be asked to do it, and this will be, there is a regulator who will be monitoring all these things. So efficiency in conduct of warehouse business will be proved only when the both the parties, or the parties who are depending on the warehouse, get satisfactory services from the warehouse. So that it needs to ensure that there will be a satisfactory services from the warehouse delivered to the parties. So then, to make regulations laying down the standards for approval of certifying agencies for grading of goods, and to promote professional organization connected with the warehouse business. So there are a lot of quality certifying peoples are there. So there are a lot of technology service related professionals will be there. There are a lot of logistic professionals who will be involved in this. See, the end of the day, they want to connect this. So connect with the warehouse business. They want to connect all these professional people who are there, who take care of all the supply chain related transactions, right? So that becomes the main objective or the main focus of the warehouse authority. So the end of the day, they need to have a professional approach in order to enhance these type of interlinkings of the areas. So that becomes very important. The last one is to call for information from undertaking inspections of conduct, inquiries and investigation, including audits of the warehouse, accreditation agencies and other organizations connected with the warehousing business. So the main see, when we read all these things, I think the authorities are more concerned with giving the proper services, okay, and ensuring that the warehouses are professionally set. So these are the two things: professionally setting up of the warehouse is one side. Second one is protecting the interest of the people who have stored the commodity in warehouse. So that's what the regulations are trying to do. All this audit, everything is for whom you are doing audit. See, audit is done not only for your internal purpose, it also benefits your consumers. So the intent may be to audit your own way of functioning or the working style of that particular warehouse, but it has a direct bearing on the customers also, who are depending on you for your business. So in the both way, it is helping the company, especially helping the both, that is warehouse as well as the customers who are keeping the produce or commodities in the warehouse, right? So regulations work for benefiting both the parties. So that's, it takes utmost care in order to protect the interest. So at the same time, they are doing all the they are inspecting the accreditation agencies, they are certifying, we're doing the verifications and all those things. So at the same time, they are also telling they need to select the customers in such a way that they follow all the quality standards, procedures and the registration norms, all those things. So one time, at one instance itself, they're telling both parties should come together and do it. So that's a very important thing what they've done. Then to determine the rate of and levy the fees and other charges for carrying out the provisions of this act, that's the main thing. So regulations are done through the charges and all those things. So warehouse cannot have independent things for doing all these things. So even if they are given the powers also, they will be regulated in terms of they cannot charge exorbitant fees or exorbitant interest or exorbitant demurrages and all those things. So there are procedural matters which has been laid out by the regulatory authorities. Okay, so accordingly they need to function. So that's very important. It also regulates rates, advantages, terms and conditions that may be offered by warehouse in respect of warehouse business. So that they look into also even the activities of driving the business, okay, of the warehouse. So that also gets regulated. To specify by regulation the form of manner in which books of account shall be maintained and statement of account shall be rendered by warehouse. So even that information is also given by the warehouse authorities. That is regulators. To maintain a panel of arbitrators and to nominate arbitrators from such panels in dispute between warehouse and warehouse receipt holders. So the regulators see normally they don't want to get the issue settled in the court of law because it will become a lengthy process. So one best way is they help in taking up the service of an arbitrator. So arbitrator is a person who comes and try to settle the disputes between the warehouse authorities and the warehouse recipient, warehouse recipient holder, that is nothing but the customer. So they try to bring in these two people into one network, and they try to help these two people in order to settle their any disputes between them in an amicable way. So without going into court of law or without going into any other channels where there may be a time consuming or it's a costly process also. So the regulator tries to appoint an arbitrators. Arbitrators will be between these two people and they will be settling between these two parties. Then to regulate and develop electronic system of holding and transfer to credit balance of fungible goods deposited in the warehouse. Then to determine the minimum percentage of space to be kept reserved for storage of agriculture commodity in a registered warehouse, and to specify the duties and responsibility of the warehouse men. So that's again a very important function. So if you can keep on writing down, right, so anything what the warehouse does will be regulated. That's what it means. So whatever the end-to-end functions what the warehouse does, right, and not only from warehouse perspective but also from the customer's perspective. So what all the activities are taking place from the customer side and from the warehouse side, right, everything is regulated, everything is under the control of the regulators. So that means to say somewhere they are envisaging proper control on the system itself, so that tomorrow either of the parties should not feel that they were not satisfied or they did not get the maximum benefit what they were expecting from using that service. So it should not happen like that. So that is the intent under which the warehouse authority works, and they exercise such other powers and perform such other functions as may be prescribed. So that's the overall perspective of how the warehouse authority works. Okay, so that's done through regulations called as warehouse regulation authority. So now let us think about something on warehouse receipts. Okay, so this warehouse receipts, right, they can be held as depository form with the NSDL. So what is NSDL? NSDL is the authority which is doing all your trading transactions. So whatever the trading happens, right, in the market. So when we tell market, we are talking about commodity market. So NSDL is the national depositories. Okay, it keeps all the depositories of all your stocks and all your commodities and all those things. So it's a place where you keep all your shares. It's a place where all your commodities are kept. So that is depository. Depository's role is to accept all the electronic form of documents. Okay, so NSDL is one which keeps all these records of all these things. So being the major DP for commodity warehouse receipts, so depository participants, it's called as DP, means depository participants. So what is this depository participant? They are the people who will be interested under the law to keep all the deposits, that is in the form of electronic form. So we don't keep anything in the shares, and all are not kept in physical. Share certificates are not kept today in physical form. So they are all given in electronic form. So there should be some person who should act as a depositor, where he keeps all the shares under his surveillance. So that is called as DP, depository. They are the people who keep all this, the electronic format of all this documentation, right? They safeguard your documentation. So they are called as depository participants, DPs they call as. Okay. So in share market also we come across this term, and even in commodity markets also we come across this term. So NSDL is an authority which is helping through various registered agencies, right? They are helping us to keep all the electronic format of this shares and these commodities and all those things to be stored under depository participant. Okay, so NSDL has agreement with NCDX and MCX and about 20 warehouses that holds 35 different commodities in custody. So they have already tied up. NSDL has already tied up with the two main commodity exchanges like NCDX is there, National Commodity Derivative Exchanges, and MCX, of course, which is there, which is one of the biggest exchanges we have told, right? Multi-commodity exchanges. So about 20 warehouses are there that holds almost 35 different commodities. So there are 20 warehouses which are associated with this. So this was a statistics which has been taken sometime in 3 years back. So I think more number of warehouses will be added now by this time. Okay, so 30, don't go the numbers. Okay, don't tell them the numbers in your exam. Tell that sufficient number of warehouses have been engaged under NCDX and MCX to act as a depository. Okay. Then how your okay, let us understand what is your warehouse receipt. So we are talking about warehouse receipt for quite a long time. Let us understand what is this warehouse receipt all about. See, warehouse receipts are title documents which are issued by the warehouse authorities to depositors. So who are depositor? The person who deposits the commodity is called as a depositor. So warehouse authorities are the person with whom you are dealing with. That is the warehouse which you are dealing with, right? So they are called as warehouse authorities. So what is warehouse receipt? Warehouse receipt is a document, title document. That's very important. Title document means the document which gives you title for holding that particular commodity in your name. So title means that you are possessing that particular right on that particular commodity. So that's the title. So title document issued by warehouse to the depositors against the commodity deposited in the warehouse. So when you keep the commodity in the warehouse and the warehouse authority accepts your commodity after doing the proper check of quality standards and all those things, we have discussed that. So when they take the possession of that particular commodity for so many months or so many days, as per you, whatever you are told in your application, right? So then they give you an acknowledgement that is called as warehouse receipts. WR, it's called as warehouse receipts is an acknowledgement for depositing. Okay, where it says that this person has deposited so much of quantity, so much quality of on these goods with this on such and such a date and all those things. So it's just like an acknowledgement what you are getting. But it's a very, very, very important acknowledgement because it helps in taking loans and all those things. So these goods in the warehouse are valued by an assayer and verified and certified by a statutory auditor. So that's a very important thing. So before they accept these goods, right, a lot of things are done. We have discussed on that part. Okay, so they do all the valuation, the certification will be done, verification will be done. So they have their own process of accepting the commodity, whatever you're taking, and as soon as they accept, their accepted commodities will be documentarily given title through warehouse receipts. So that is called as warehouse receipts. So we'll study the functions of warehouse receipts and what all it contains and all those things in our next class. So it's already 10:30. So I'll take the next session in the next week. So where we'll study about what are the various authorities which are there, what are the various functions which the warehouse receipts does in the market, and how to where you can use this warehouse receipt. So and what are the contents of the warehouse receipt? I'll show you the contents also. So how the warehouse receipt looks like and all those things. So yes, any questions are there for me? So if you have any questions, you can ask me, or else we'll close the session today. So we'll open the session next week. Any questions on warehousing till now? Whatever we have studied, Warehouse Development Regulatory Authority, Warehouse Development Act, Regulation and Development Act 2007. Okay, so fine, we'll close it now. So next class, I'll be continuing with the same topic. There are some more things which we need to discuss before we go to the settlement process. Okay, so next class I'll be dealing with the same topic on warehouse. So there are a lot of things to be covered in the warehouse. I'll show some of the warehouse receipts also. So format of warehouse receipt, what it contains, and all those things I'll show you in the next class. Thank you.